Welcome to Passioneer Magazine, the podcast, where you'll hear inspirational stories, encouraging news, and in-depth interviews with authors, influencers, CEOs, and thought leaders. Passioneer Magazine, the podcast. Bold ideas, brave pursuits, boundless inspiration. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Passioneer Magazine, the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butts-Chester. You guys know who I am, and today I am here with Hugh Massie. I cannot wait to talk to him about the all that he does, and I think you are in for a pleasant treat. Hello. Thank you, and welcome to Passioneer Magazine, the podcast.
Great to be with. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Now, before we get started, I realize that I may be introducing you to some people that are unfamiliar with you and your work. So, first question, tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
So probably the simplest way of putting it across is I'm a reformed accountant. So I started life as a CPA in Australia, and now I am a behavioral solutions architect living in Atlanta in the United States. So you could say it's quite a career shift in some ways, and life shift. Moving countries definitely, but a career shift. But there's a journey that's gone on in between that's got me from one to the other. But I think that at the end of the day, both money, finances, business, all intersects with understanding how people tick.
Absolutely. Now, one of my first questions for you is, and like you said, you are the type of person who helps people with the various decisions that they have to make in their lives. With that being said, how do you assist the individual? And then how do you assist the group or the business? Is there any difference between the two when you're getting them started on a new program or a new way of thinking about what it is that they do?
So the way I always start, everything, of course, is to, being human is to understand as best as I can what the person's particular challenge may be. But from that, I am really seeking to understand the human being and how they're wired, and in particular, what a person's natural instinctive behavior is. And that may not always be seen on the surface. That is what's living below the surface. That can be in part a lot more invisible, but it shows up when a person's under pressure, often caused by money or some sort of relationship type issue. But that's where the person's core talents sit, their decision-making style, how they interact. That's the true person, and when they're connected to that, that's where they're going to live more authentically or operate more authentically, naturally, and be happier. So I want to know that first. That's it's really wired into us from very early in life, usually. By 3 years old, a lot of it's set there. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. And that it would be no different to, am I coaching somebody, or am I working with a board of directors or a executive leadership team? I'm going to want to know the natural hardwired behavior up front before I go too far on anything.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Now, when someone goes to, for example, your LinkedIn page, it says Executive Chairman and Founder of DNA Behavior International, the Behavior and Money Insights Company. I love that. I am a naturally curious person. That is definitely something that I would want to check out. My question to you is, did you always know that this was going to be where you would be at this stage in your life? When you were in high school, were you thinking, I'm going into the science field, I'm going into the business field? What have always been your natural inclinations?
So from very early in life, let's say I'm 5 years old, I always wanted to have a global business. So my dream was to have a global business. And, being very human about it, I would sit there with my Lego and my teddy bears, and I would play, the game of having a business conglomerate, essentially. And so as I went through high school, I wanted to be an accountant or a lawyer, a professional person. And in the end, I went down the accountancy path. I happened to be very good at taxation law. So I went in and that's what my initial career became. And, I was very good at it. But at about 30 years old, it came to me that maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore and that I needed to go and be more entrepreneurial. So I left the corporate world where I was providing tax advice and set up a wealth management business with the goal of helping people become, get a more personalized experience than what could be delivered at a bank or a wealth management firm. I didn't know how to do it necessarily well, I knew how to do it because I was already doing it as an accountant, but I didn't know how to do it in the scientific sense like I do today. And then
Oh,
a few years into the business, someone asked me, Hugh, what are you really passionate about? I want to help people all over the world become financially self-empowered. And I realized that was teaching them about their behavior, their financial behavior, how to make better decisions. It wasn't financial literacy in the normal sense of teaching people about compound interest. And I also knew then that if I knew a person's behavior, I could personalize the experience. And this was very, Angela, deeply ingrained in me because I've been writing about it for a few years, but I didn't realize I was writing about it. And so all the dots got connected pretty quickly because I had the aha moment. And I then went and reflected, pieced together how this could be done. And then I had to make the choice, you know, do I go and build a behavioral sciences business or do I stick out the wealth management business but use behavioral science in it? And I decided that if my boyhood dream was to have a global business, then I better go and do the behavioral science business because I could build technology that impacted people globally. And that was really the decision making that went on. That's, a snapshot of it. And, I got on the path to coming from Sydney to Atlanta 40 times in 4 years to get all the science validated. So that's how it happened.
hmm. Now, one of the things that you talk about is behavior makes money. When you are explaining that, how do your clients understand it before you explain it, and when do they have that aha moment that yes, this makes sense for them?
So I think if the way I talk to people about it is every, CEO and senior leader of a company is absolutely influencing the outcomes that come in their company. They are making the decisions that drive the results, that drive the culture, that drive the relationships, and all of that is what delivers business outcomes. And so what we did was a research study where we assessed all the leaders of the Fortune 500 companies and saw that the companies that were more profitable compared to their competitors, there were certain traits that got stronger and stronger. And so that's where we know that if the leadership team has certain behavioral traits in it in enough strength, those companies do better, uh, bottom line wise, and that's how it is. And it's the same in personal decision making as well. We can see there are certain types of people that financially do better.
Yeah.
So we know the traits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you speak about exponential futures and quantum leaps. Now, I know that that is familiar to a lot of people, but you may be introducing this concept to some new people today. For someone who's listening and they are feeling stuck, they're feeling less capable today than they did when they first began. What are usually some ways that you can help them become unstuck, using a familiar phrase, and that they can get to where they should be on that best timeline, on that best space for them?
Yeah, so as an entrepreneur and sort of my thinking around this is if I get people to stand back and say, okay, let's get into your dreams and dream big, then start small and finish big. And so start with the number one today and then imagine that you times that by 10. That's 10. Times it by 10 again. That's 100. Now, if you keep doing that, 10 to the power of 9 is a billion. And so why don't you just stand back and think about how could you impact the lives of a billion people in some way? So for example, you, Angela, could impact a billion lives with your podcasts and other things that you do. And so I get everybody to think about that, right? And then well, that gets you inspired and gets you thinking differently. And then you can work backwards and say, well, what would the steps be to do it? And it's about taking tiny steps first. And I've done this exercise for myself, and I'm on the journey of that. If you think about it, my business is about getting people profiled and helping them with the profile information to make better choices in their life. So when I imagined, okay, what would it look like if I had a billion people in my database that I've directly or indirectly helped? What steps do I need to take? Well, that starts to change the game of everything of what you do. Okay, yes, I'd already built a system, was on a track to help people globally. We've worked with people in 125 countries, all that stuff. But thinking about the goal in a different way gets you, and the impact in a different way gets you to, it changes everything.
Mhm.
But I think many more people could be thinking that way, and that would change the game of what they're doing. And I would say it to students as well. Okay, go to school, learn everything you can, but then think about what are you going to do to impact a billion people, and think about that, and live beyond yourself, and you never know what might happen.
Mhm. Agreed, 100% there. I remember when the conversation about reverse engineering your life was definitely the topic of discussion. That kind of buzzword has perhaps been replaced with many others along the way. But you could tell the people that were really onto something. They understood what needed to be said and what needed to be done to get to that end result. And I think for those of us who understood it, grabbed a hold of it and said, yes, these are the type of people that I need and want in my life to be able to continue having this conversation. And for so many people, this concept might be new or different or even a little kind of woo woo out there, as folks say. But once they have that aha moment, once they see the correlation between what feels so far and you're able to bring it closer with those very tiny baby steps initially, I think people really do just go, whoa, the world was so limited before, but I see now that it really is within my grasp. What you're doing is such powerful work, and I think that more people need to be aware that it's going on. My next question for you is that your work blends behavioral finance, AI, and what you call money energy. What makes this approach fundamental? people, first of all, are going, money energy? Are you saying that money has energy? Again, this might be a new concept for some people. Those who know. But can you explain to me, why is it important that we are aware of these three areas and we blend them together?
Yeah, so money absolutely does have energy. And I think that, how I break it down for people is that there's really three dimensions to money. Money is a currency. That's what's in your bank. That's what you're uh, touching, holding. That's the tangible part. Um, an accountant will say that's your wealth today, right? But money is also it's money is behavioral. It's about how you, in a way, how you think about it and how you decide about it, which is entirely linked to your personality. Um, some people are going to be savers, others are going to be spenders, some are going to take risks, others are going to be cautious, others are into experiences, and that's where what they do with money, which is coming from their mindset. But money is also an energy in the sense that we're all thinking about money in some way on a 24/7 basis, even when we're asleep. And that's the energy part, and I think if you really look at it, we're all talking about money in some way for most of the day,
Mhm.
and our brain is thinking about it when we're asleep. And so money doesn't isn't just compounding in the bank, compound interest. In a way, it's an energetic buildup inside all of us. And the more that you can understand that and build a healthier relationship to money, your thoughts about it will be better, which is likely to lead to more of it coming in, certainly less stress. Whereas if you have bad thoughts of money, about money, or judgments about money, or about people in relation to money, whether it's a child, a spouse, business partner, some other person you know, that can lead to all bad things, right? And so I think that the more that as humans we understand ourselves in how we deal with money and get a healthier relationship to it, the better off we're going to be. If we're always worried about what somebody else has, that's a problem. Uh, Spending it on useless things, that's a problem. I think it's just about having a healthier relationship with yourself, healthier relationship with money, and more than likely, your life is going to grow.
Hmm. Hmm. I know that for so many people, before they get to someone like you who's going to help them not only on a personal level but on a business level, I find that when they're in my counseling chair, then it is, but my parents didn't do very well with money. I heard conversation of lack or poverty as opposed to abundance. And so many people are just walking around dealing with learned behaviors when that's not who they are as an
Yeah,
individual, but they're holding someone else's baggage. And boy, do we get to have conversations when you realize that you're holding someone else's baggage. Put that down and let's walk in who you are authentically.
yeah,
I remember telling this young man, he was at the grocery store and the money in his pocket was wadded up. And I said, "Oh, honey, don't do that with your money." And he was like, "Oh, okay." I said, "You straighten it out, you fold it, you place it in your pocket, but you never ball it up and stick it in there." And he was like, "Okay." But you could see that he liked the idea of, oh, I could do something different. This is the only thing that's been shown. Just grab it off the counter and shove it in the pocket, as opposed to having a moment of mutual respect, let's say, of thank you, like you said, with that energy, receiving it and placing it in your pocket and going about your day. So I know that someone out there is going, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that perhaps the little things I'm doing is cutting off that positive energy that could be flowing into my life.
absolutely.
I love
And
it.
it's all about mindset.
Mm-hmm. 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 Agree there. Now, speaking of that mindset, why do you think that conversations about money are still taboo or they're hard to have for certain people?
I think that for, most people compare themselves to somebody else.
Right.
When they talk about money, they feel judged. And there's some unresolved issue for all of us that in our life, I think you're almost alluding to it there, Angela, in terms of sort of the baggage that we bring in. Um, there's something there that for all of us that then makes us feel judged or lesser. And it's really hard as a human if you see somebody else that's a peer that maybe has a lot more money, appears to be successful, and you think, gee, I wish I was like them. Or you're sitting down with a spouse and your spouse has a particular view about money or what success is. Um, and in your mind, you haven't lived up to it. And that might only be in your mind.
Right.
Um, but the thing is that none of us really know what anybody else's story is. And another person's story is not yours and it's not really relevant. And I would say that to people that there's a lot of people out there that have got a lot of money, but they may not be healthy in their relationships. They may not be healthy in their ethics, how they conduct themselves, and they may not be physically healthy. Do you want to be Steve Jobs? Yep, have basically an unlimited amount of money, but only live to the age of 56 years old. Now, did he impact the whole world and create a massive legacy? Absolutely. But is that to for all of us to aspire to? And so I think that one of the biggest causes of mental health for people is comparing themselves to others, and particularly in relation to money. There will always be somebody that's got more, but again, we don't know their story.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so, so therefore, the healthy way to talk about money, it's not unhealthy to talk about money, but is more to do it from what's my purpose and what's my identity, and am I living up to those things? And then from that, once you've sorted that out, what your purpose and particularly your identity and how you want to be seen in the world, then we can have a discussion about money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
much easier then.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Now, in one word, and I know this is going to be hard, in one word, let's give in 2 words, up to 2 words. Because sometimes one word is really hard. It might be a little phrase, right? But in 1 or 2 words, what excites you most about the future?
Technology.
Yeah.
Because I think technology is going to unlock all of us, and doesn't matter where the world gets to from a health perspective, political perspective, economic perspective, financial markets. There's a solution for all of us in technology, and technology allows all of us to have the opportunity to be scalable, to live an abundant life, and to serve that billion people that I talked about.
Hmm. Hmm. Agreed. Agreed. I couldn't agree with it. It really is the common denominator, I think, for you can hit the ground running. Use the technology that we have so as it advances and changes, you will not be left behind and you can find your place alongside it. I love it. I love it. Hugh, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with me here on Passioneer Magazine, the podcast.
Thank you. It's been great.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Passioneer Magazine, the podcast.